Welcome to Skin Sync, the official podcast of Elevate-Derm Alliance, your trusted source for the latest in dermatology for PAs and NPs. Join our hosts for real clinician perspectives and expert guest insights as they explore everyday dermatology topics with practical takeaways.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Skin Sync podcast. I'm here today with my co-host, Jennifer Connor, Elevate colleague, and again, our backstage producer who happens to be here as a co-host today in the studio. And we're glad to welcome back Dr. Riley McLean. She is a Mohs surgeon and board-certified dermatologist with UMASS, and we're going to talk about sustainability in dermatology. It's a topic that I don't think I've ever heard anyone speak about before. I don't think that I've ever given it a second thought, quite frankly. What about you, Jennifer?
I am right there with you. I had to do a little research when I learned that Riley was involved with this at UMass. So I think I'll kick things off. When we think about the carbon footprint of a typical dermatology clinic, what does that even mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm going to, and the vocabulary is important, right? And so the basic vocabulary of sustainability is, sustainability is just looking at how we treat our environment and our impact on others. And so we see it a lot in the news, but the reason I got into this work was I would turn that side of my brain off when I came into clinic, where I would be doing X, Y, and Z, recycling, cloth papering, all that kind of stuff at home. And then I'd go in and I'd like plastic wrap the entire room in the name of patient safety when I was doing Mohs. So that's what got me started in this field. So within this field, the way that you measure your impact, the way that you measure our effect on the environment is a carbon footprint. And the idea behind that is every action that we do and every waste we generate takes a certain amount of energy to produce and to get rid of. And so our carbon footprint is just like the overall sum of the cost that we have undertaken as dermatologists. So when we think about the outpatient space where dermatology is happening, we actually are really energy intensive. Our rooms are bigger oftentimes than hospital-based practices. We like the nice space, the nice elbow room, but it does mean that outpatient offices require more energy to heat, to cool, to build. Our exam chairs require a lot of energy. Lasers require a lot of energy, and we generate a very high amount of waste with our outpatient procedures. So when we think about a carbon footprint, that's the building carbon footprint. Then you add in the fact that patients are driving to come see us, and then you add in the fact of what we're telling them, prescribing them, and the after effects. And so when we think about our carbon footprint, we're pretty large, especially when we think about the medications we prescribe and the impact and the waste generated by procedures and what we prescribe afterwards.
It's really helpful. So obviously now I'm concerned and worried about all the things I'm doing to expand my carbon footprint. So what are some tips that you recommend for us clinicians, particularly in dermatology, to reduce waste and maybe just reduce that carbon footprint?
Yeah. Unless you know to worry about it, like once your eyes are open, you'll realize how much waste you generate. And that's kind of how it started for me. So after I became aware, wait, I'm not doing any of this at work. One of the first ways that I evaluated, which I recommend that people do, is think about it in one of three different ways. One, if you're a person that's responsible for the financial pieces of your practice and running your practice, look at the top items that you spend money on, because that's a good way of saying, okay, we're spending a ton of money on sterile gloves. Let's actually look at how many of them we need. How many assistants are gloving? Who's putting on gloves and then realizing that they didn't take out all the supplies they needed and then taking the gloves off? Like, can we just improve our process that way? So if you're responsible for the financial piece, that's oftentimes a good place to start. If you're not responsible for the financial piece, you still have a lot of things that are under your control, but how you go about thinking about them, I usually divide into one of two things. One, you can think about the patient process from the time they enter your door till the time they leave. So you think they came in, we have paper forms for them. Even though there's an environmental cost of digital forms, it's still better for the environment to do digital forms. Okay, that's them in our waiting room. What's the temperature in our waiting room? Now they're going back to the exam room. Do I always have my medical assistant put them in a gown? I was going to say Johnny, but I'm sure that people are not from New England, so I'm going to educate you. A Johnny is a gown in Massachusetts. So if you don't
I've
have
never
them
heard of
change
that.
into a Johnny, and you'll probably be, if you're doing a spell check, they don't need to be in a gown. That gown has an environmental cost of washing it and everything. If they're sitting on an exam table, do you have a cloth on the exam table? Do you have a paper sheet? Do you have nothing? There's evidence that you don't need anything on the exam table as long as it's cleaned in between use. Then you can think through your biopsy and what do you have on your tray? Do you have more equipment than you might need on your tray? Do you give them a goodie bag to go? Is there too much stuff in that goodie bag to go? Do you give them printed instructions afterwards? Do you do a virtual, the my chart message with the AVS? So those are all different steps. And then you can even go further and think, what am I prescribing and what am I recommending? One of the biggest things that we think about right now is our biologics. Because if you've ever seen what a patient gets when they get a biologic at home, it is a large amount of waste. There are styrofoam containers, and that those styrofoam containers are not taken back by the companies. They end up getting thrown in the trash. There's a cooling pack with every single dose that they're getting. And it's interesting because in pulmonology, they've looked at biologics. And because inhalers are awful for the environment, biologics reduce your carbon footprint. But I'm not sure that the same can be said in dermatology. I think the evidence is out on that. We still haven't done enough research into it. But you can even think about that. Are you prescribing an injectable that is less frequent deliveries with a similar PASI score? That insurances would cover. I'm now talking kind of a little bit out of my league because I don't prescribe them anymore, but, even things that you prescribe can make a difference, and intervals of follow-up and whether you do telehealth, all of those are ways that you can reduce your impact. I'm not gonna go in great detail. The other way to do your an assessment is that you can do a waste audit, where you literally pick through your trash and you see what the most is in the trash, and you work backwards to say, "Can I reduce what the component is in?"
Because as I'm thinking about how much I print out in like one day, I love a printout. I love a paper handout. And now I'm going to have to reconsider all of that. Yeah.
Oh, man, I am with you. I mean, I am totally with you, and I think that there's still value in that, especially if you're doing a paper printout where you're circling things and
Yeah.
you're adding annotations for the patient. But it is one of those things that maybe you think, okay, can we switch to double-sided? Or, is this patient going to throw this out as soon as they walk out? If it's an unnecessary piece of paper, that's one thing. But, you know, the interesting thing is once your eyes are open to it, you can either feel bad about everything, and it's a very normal response to feel bad in the initial period, and then you realize, "I'm not gonna do all of this." But you can make, like, a couple of changes, and it can still make a big difference.
Wow, I'm a little flabbergasted, but kind of speaking about the paper, are there technological solutions, things in terms of technology where we can reduce our carbon footprint? I think EMRs, that's an obvious solution, but what else can we be thinking about?
Yeah, EMRs are a great example. I mean, there is a lot of energy that goes into the storage of data, but it's still better than having paper that is then stored in some warehouse that you then have to heat and cool as well. Um, Telehealth is a huge, huge way of reducing a carbon footprint of a practice. And telehealth obviously comes with its own challenges if you don't have a well-oiled machine in your office of medical assistants that can get the person and walk them through getting into the telehealth room. But it makes a big difference in terms of follow-up, um, using dissolving sutures if you're going to do a punch biopsy, or using gel foam so the person doesn't have to drive back to the office, because patient commuting hours is what really increases the footprint. So telehealth is a good way of improving the footprint. Oh, the other thing is some of those online resources. So we have a study that we're still trying to figure out where to publish it, looking at iPledge virtual books versus printed copies and the carbon impact. And, the spoiler alert is that it's better for the environment if you have them enroll virtually. And there's some evidence from health literature that they don't get that much more out of a paper copy. So it's not like it's a detrimental thing. So there are some ways that tech can help.
Yeah, I think I'm always a person who loves to have a paper copy of things, but then I really think about myself once I get home, what do I do with it? I read it, and then I probably throw it away. And I'm sure my patients are doing the same thing, but I like that initial hands-on piece of
Yeah.
paper
I'm with
with
you.
all things.
Yeah, it does. It feels better handing something.
It
I mean, I
does.
still have a paper calendar, right? So I'm with
Yeah,
you. But exactly like you said, I don't even know where after I've gotten them, I'm like, man, I really wish I also had that virtually, right? Because then you would
right.
actually still be able to refer to it. So,
And now we have, I mean, I've seen, I think the iPad Pro, there are technology devices where you can scan these things and then they show up on your devices, or I don't know, there's
mhm,
tech that I can't even understand, but I'm sure there are ways that we can have these things with a QR code or something that patients can scan. Of course, there are
mhm,
limitations for patients who are maybe a little more elderly and resistant to technology, then we still need some paper in the office, but
Hmm.
maybe those are some solutions we could consider.
A couple things that actually come to mind too when it comes to just the energy use is the lighting. In my clinic, we have motion sensors in every single room and in our hallways as well. So I think after maybe 5 to 10 minutes, the lights will shut off. And in my little office space, I didn't do this for the energy conserving purposes. I did it for the vibes. But I turn off the lights in my pod and I just have like one little lamp that I keep. I just wanted a cool, calming energy. But I feel like I'm saving the world by doing that now. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. That's perfect. Or powering down computers, right? Powering
Exactly.
down. We never do it at our office. We just started doing it about a year ago on weekends. Just like powering down your computer, turning lights off when you leave spaces, having a water fountain instead of individual small water bottles, having a recycling station. Recycling is kind of a sham. Like it doesn't really happen
Yeah.
most of the time, but
Yeah.
it's still better than styrofoam cups, for example.
Kind of to that point, let's talk sustainable skincare, the cosmeceutical industry. I think in the recent years, that's been a big kind of tagline: clean beauty, sustainable beauty. Is there any evidence that you're aware of that these claims are actually true? Are these companies actually providing data to show how sustainable they are? Or is it all just kind of for show?
Well, it's kind of I was gonna curse, but I think you'd have to bleep that out. It's kind of it's kind of it's called greenwashing, right? So greenwashing is this idea that you put a label that sounds green on it. Like if you get a box of Lucky Charms, which we may or may not have in our kitchen for my kids, and you look on it, it says things that make it sound healthy, right? The same thing happens in the green space. So yes, there are companies that are trying to do the right thing. There are companies that are trying to source ingredients that are, I wanna use air quotes, healthier or greener. And it's hard to figure out what is true and what is not true. I think if I'm thinking about it, there's people who are worried about the health of what they're putting on them, and there are people who are worried about the environmental effects. And I think if you're concerned about the health effects, you could worry about every single thing you put on your skin. However, it's hard to parse out what's real and not real and which label and standard is real or is valuable or not. Um, I I tend to not worry about the clean piece in terms of what I put on, but for patients who are worried about it, the environmental working group, as far as I can tell, doesn't have major corporate backing. And I actually even went as far as looking into the foundations that donate to them to make sure this isn't like a cloak and dagger that Procter and Gamble is actually behind all of it or something like that. As far as I could tell, that's not the case. So, for someone who is worried about clean beauty, going to the environmental working group and kind of processing through whatever they're interested in putting on their skin and seeing the warnings that they have is one thing. And then if you're concerned more about the environmental piece, I think the big thing to think about is packaging and production. And so production meaning, where are they making this? Are we transporting this from far across the globe and there's a personal impact to the working conditions where that product is made? So that's one. And then packaging. How reusable is the packaging? There are companies like TerraCycle who take things back and painstakingly take them apart, but any tubing that looks like it's metal on the outside oftentimes still has a plastic lining on the inside, and so it's not necessarily something that's easy to be broken down. So I really think about this and struggle with this for my own personal use in terms of sunscreens and vitamin C serum. So I love, you guys probably have had somebody on that talks about vitamin C and the value of vitamin C for the skin. Vitamin C is great. Vitamin C is also very not shelf stable. And so it's degraded by light and it's degraded by air. And so the most sustainable packaging is a glass bottle that you can have like the dropper, and then you get a refill where it's the dropper, but it's the glass bottle. You can recycle that and then reuse the same dropper. I've yet to find a company that does that because in order for that to work, you need a really small bottle of vitamin C in order for it to stay effective before it degrades. Vitamin C is one I struggle with, and sunscreen. You can get sunscreen in refillable containers or aluminum or glass containers. But in reality, am I going to bring that to the beach with my 4 kids and have it be pasty and hard to get on? No, I'm going to bring a stick from Neutrogena and a spray bottle, and the spray bottle is entirely not recyclable. So I think that's like a business for me right there. I'll go make sustainable sustainable sunscreen bottles. So you just got to do the best you can, right? So
Right.
you buy whatever sunscreen you and your family will actually put on in the largest size bottle that it will stay good for, in whatever packaging is the most recyclable of the option.
And it's frustrating too, because at least in my community, I'm in Georgia, but they don't recycle glass anymore. Like they won't pick it up from your home. So we have to physically collect the glass in a bin, take it, drive it to the recycling center, just a few miles from here and deliver it there. But if you want to recycle your glass, you just can't. It's not an option anymore. So it's just when you're trying your best, it's just there's all these barriers in the way when it comes to plastic and metal recycling and glass. And so, it's very frustrating, but so I could see how this can
That
get
is
really complicated.
That is totally shocking to me because plastics, of all the plastics that are put out there in the world, 20 to 30% get submitted for recycling. And
Oh.
of that, less than half are actually be able to be recycled. So every amount of plastic, maybe 9% of it gets recycled. Glass and aluminum, it's way higher than that. They like what you get one glass bottle, you crush it up, melt it down, and then you make a new glass bottle. It's so reusable. So that's atrocious. Come on, Georgia, do
It really
better.
is. It really is.
Yeah,
That's
wow.
how I feel.
It's terrible. Okay, so kind of in the same vein, thinking about just climate change and our skin health in general,
Mhm.
do you foresee, or is there any data regarding climate change and trends that we might see in skin health in terms of skin cancer and inflammatory skin disease and things along those lines?
Yeah, we're going to have to be on our game for this. And the reason for that is, as the climate changes, extremes of temperature are more common. And so, something like atopic dermatitis, which is flared by extremes of temperature, those flares are likely going to get worse. There's also some studies that atopic derm is worse when their air pollution is worse, and that's one of the features that happens with climate change. And it's another one of those features that is really disproportionately affecting people of low socioeconomic status. So it's a great opportunity for us to help equalize the field to improve our carbon footprint, but also be ready for the changes that will come for our patients. And I think the biggest thing we have to think about, skin cancer is on the rise. We're getting better at picking it up. You know, increased UV is associated with increased skin cancer. Eva Parker had an article on it. And, it's jury's still out on exactly how strong the correlation is with skin cancer, but it is there. And the biggest thing is changing vectors. So as we have less hard freezes in New England, we're more likely that we're going to be seeing Lyme disease year round, right? And as mosquitoes don't have hard freezes and die off, they'll continue to expand the territories that mosquitoes make it to. So, malaria, yellow fever, all sorts of different mosquito-borne illnesses are going to keep spreading how wide their vectors are. And then, as climate gets worse, we're going to have more climate refugees, and that's going to change you know, what conditions we see in certain areas of the country. So it will definitely tax us in terms of our medical thinking. Um, and there's going to continue to be more evidence in the literature about this. There are some real thought leaders in dermatology that are looking into this. So you can expect that you're going to be seeing more and more articles about it as time goes on.
Very frightening to hear all of this. So to, I guess, make it more positive, what can we do as derm APPs, the dermatologists out there as well, when it comes to just being advocates or, contributing to the advocacy when it comes to climate change and sustainability as a whole? What do we do? Other than kind of being mindful of our recycling, what efforts, what are the easiest things that we can reach for to try to help this process?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. And it does sound a little depressing when you hear it kind of all, but remember, Rome wasn't built in a day. Not all of these changes are going to take place. Not all of them might be doable in the phase of life or the practice setting or whatnot that we've talked about. But just find one thing to do, right? Make the world just a tiny bit better by the choices that you make. And one of the things that I have found in this work is it doesn't matter where you fall on your career, on your prior training, on your political views, whatnot. No one likes the idea of leaving the world. So if you can find a way to reduce your waste, great. If you can find a way to reduce your energy consumption, great. And that might be all you're able to do. If you want to get involved, the AAD has multiple working groups on this. Talk to whatever institution you work with. I mean, I love that you guys invited me on so that we could talk about this because awareness is power. Um, I think that we all need to start kind of lobbying on our colleagues in the pharmaceutical industry about how can we help improve dermatology's footprint in the pharmaceutical space. So there's lots of different ways, and they can be small or they can be bigger, but just make one small choice today and it will make a difference down the road.
And I think on a more granular level, each of us or our listeners just decide to be the one person in your practice that brings this up, right? Hey, are we thinking about this? Or what is one change that we can make? And then once you make that one change, let's go for another one. And those little changes over
Mhm,
time make a difference, right? So if you don't have someone in
mhm.
your practice, then be that person.
Yeah, and
100%.
it doesn't anybody can make this change. In our group, our one of our derm techs just led to changing us over from single-use punch biopsy kits to reusable punch biopsy kits, and she led that charge and she made that happen. And so even empowering your staff that you're working with, because a lot of the decisions that get made, we think we have control over, but it's really the people who are setting up our trays, right? It's the people who are doing the work with us. So involving them too is great.
It's fantastic. So, Riley, I hope you speak at conferences because we would absolutely love to have you at one of our Elevate conferences in the very near future.
That
Absolutely.
would be really fun. I would love to do that someday.
Excellent. Well, this was fantastic, very eye opening. Again, lots of information that I just had never really considered before. A lot of life processing I've got to do here. But thank you so much for being here today. And I am so grateful to have you on the program. And we look forward to hearing more from you soon.
Thanks for tuning in to SkinSync. Don't forget to subscribe to SkinSync on Spotify or Apple Podcasts so you never miss an episode. To explore more of Elevate's educational and career resources, visit elevate-derm.com. Please note, this podcast is for informational purposes only and not a substitute for professional medical advice. Always consult a licensed healthcare provider before making medical decisions. Clinicians must rely on their own judgment and training in all patient care situations.